Marisha here, continuing my series on free things to see and do in London. And today I'm going to share with you three venues where you can see concerts for free. The first of these is the Royal Opera House, and they have free lunchtime performances. Now, sometimes these are concerts, but sometimes it's dance performances. The one that I went to was an opera performance by two sopranos who did a 45-minute program of various pieces, some of which I was familiar with because they were pretty famous, and some of which were new to me. And so, for me personally, that felt like a really good blend. Um, Now, this is first come, first serve for seating. You show up and whoever gets there and can get a seat, then you're in, and once they run out of seats, then you can't do it. I was literally the last person who was admitted in. So I would recommend getting there at least 30 minutes early to make sure that you can get a seat. Now, the concerts don't take place in the regular kind of theater. They take place in the cafe, I guess is the best word I have for it, although it's pretty big for a cafe restaurant area. It's 2 stories tall, like the ceiling goes up 2 floors, and it's one wall is entirely windows. And so there's a lot of natural light. And the way that it's designed, it almost looks like you're in like a Victorian bird cage. It's a really beautiful venue. Um, so totally worth it. I mean, 45 minutes of professionals performing for free. It's great. And it's in Covent Garden, and so it's an area where before, after, there's interesting things to see. You can kind of wander around. The Opera House itself is beautiful. Like, I would just recommend kind of wandering around the Opera House either before or afterwards because they have some things on display like old opera costumes from previous shows on display, or some like tiaras and toe shoes and things, and some information about like the past performances there. And they have a pretty good gift shop as well. Now, the second venue is St. Martin in the Fields, which is a church which is across the street from Trafalgar Square and National Gallery. So that might be something to hit up while you're in the area at looking at National Gallery or National Portrait Gallery. Those are both right there across the street. Now, St. Martin in the Fields is more famous, I think, for their candlelight concerts that they have in their crypt. They have a cafe in their crypt and they do a lot of performances in their crypt. But those performances are ticketed and they cost money. I mean, you're talking at least £20, I think, for one of those concerts. They tend to have their free concerts on Sunday afternoons in the church. These are also ticketed. You have to get a ticket ahead of time just to secure a seat. I will say that when I went, I think probably if people had showed up at the door, they could have gotten in. But play it safe, get your ticket ahead of time. They tend to center around a theme, I think. So when I went, it was late January, and the theme was for Robert Burns Night. And so it was all Scottish music, including some pieces where it was Robert Burns poetry set to music. And this is a cappella singing by usually 4 or 5 singers. I think when I went, it was two sopranos, an alto, a bass, and maybe two tenors. Um, Really beautiful voices. A short concert, usually I think it was maybe about half an hour. So for that one, I would say it's probably not worth it just to make a trip for that, but because it is right next to the National Gallery and National Portrait Gallery, it's easy then to just pop over to one of those afterwards or go there beforehand and make a day of it. The third venue is the South Bank Center. And the South Bank Center is a really interesting venue because it has, I think, a really wide variety, eclectic mix of offerings. Most of it, again, also costs money, but they do have some free concert offerings. And the one that I went to was a professional group called Philharmonia performing Beethoven's Septet, which I had never heard of before. I'd never heard of his septet, but I learned a lot because there was a nice little information sheet that came at the door that talked all about kind of the history of the piece, and that it was actually one of his most popular pieces at the time that he was alive. And the septet is a mix of instruments that I would not have guessed necessarily would be in a septet. So it was a really, really cool experience. South Bank Center, as the name suggests, is right on the south bank of the Thames. So it's another venue where I think you can enjoy some time before or afterwards, just sort of wandering around the venue. You can walk along the river, get some beautiful shots of the skyline and the Thames, and there are plenty of restaurants in the area. The South Bank Center also tends to have like public artworks outside that you can kind of check out and get selfies with or whatever if you're into Instagram and stuff. Um, and this, like St. Martin in the Fields, you had to get a ticket ahead of time. It's free, but just to ensure that you have a seat. It was a pretty sizable theater that the performance was in, and it was pretty full. I'm guessing that maybe if you had showed up at the door, you probably could have gotten in. There was probably a few seats at the back that were available, but it was pretty full. And so I would recommend if you're thinking of doing something at South Bank Center to make sure that you do get those tickets ahead of time. Um, as kind of a side note, when I went with a friend who is not like schooled in classical music, but is someone who is open minded and willing to try new things. And so they were asking me kind of, well, like what were you thinking while you were sitting there listening to it? Like, does your mind wander? Are you like trying to follow specific notes? Are you um, just bathing in the music? What are you doing? And I said, well, I'm mostly just bathing in the music, but there were definitely moments where I felt like this immense gratitude that I had access to this, right? Because I grew up in a small town and there was no way that world class musicians were going to come to my small town and do a concert of like classical music. That wasn't going to happen. And so now that I'm in a place where I have access to that, and especially to be able to come and do this for free, is just, it's amazing. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. So that's, that's a big, I think, reason why I'm making these videos is that I've fallen in love with London, and a big part of it is how much it has to offer, and and for free. I mean, there's a lot that you can pay for, and there are a lot of things that I'm willing to pay for because there's also a lot of things that while they're not free, it's still really reasonable, like, £8 or £10 or something. But even just with the free stuff, you could go an entire year being entertained for free with all that London has to offer. And I get frustrated sometimes because I'll overhear conversations of native Londoners kind of complaining about London, and it just blows my mind. Like how can you not be grateful for all that the city has to offer? So I mean, I can't tell you now how many videos I've made of free things to see and do in London. And I would say that I probably could make just as many again on top of what I've already made of all that it has to offer. So I guess, like most of my videos, this is sort of a small love note to London and an encouragement to anybody who's thinking of coming to visit to say it's absolutely worth it. Like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you next time.